Something massive just happened in Washington, D.C., something that's been building for months and is now finally cracked wide open. The man who's been standing in the way of finally restoring election integrity, the Senate Majority Leader who told us it just wasn't realistic to get this bill passed. Yeah, the man conservatives who've been calling a RINO for good reason, John Thune, just caved. Because right now, after months of foot dragging and excuse making, Thune is finally opening the door to passing the Save America Act once and for all. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, enjoying yet another glorious day in Trump's golden age that you made possible back in November 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, did you see China just blinked? And what that means for America, for our economy, for your job, your retirement, is something the legacy media will not explain to you. Scan the QR code on the screen for my free Patriot Alerts, sharp insights, no spin, delivered right to your inbox every morning. Scan it now. Election integrity is on the move, and today one of the biggest obstacles to that integrity in the Senate just blinked. As many of you know, the Save America Act is one of the most important pieces of legislation in a generation, and one of the most popular. The latest polls show upwards of 71% of likely voters support the SAVE Act. It does two powerful things. It requires documentary proof of citizenship in order to register to vote for federal elections, and it mandates photo voter ID at the ballot box. The House has already passed it, and yet, if you could believe it, the Senate has been sitting on it for months. The Democrats refuse to allow it to come up for a vote, blocking it with their informal filibuster that's effectively shut down the Senate. That's how desperate Democrats are to keep non-citizens on the voter roll. So here's where it gets explosive. Monday night, President Trump held a White House meeting with Senators Katie Britt, Steve Daines, Lindsey Graham, and the newly confirmed DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin. And what came out of that meeting was a new plan, a two-step plan that blows past the Democrats' 60-vote filibuster wall entirely. Step one, pass a clean DHS funding bill to restore the agency's operations. Step two, immediately come back with a second reconciliation bill that funds ICE enforcement and puts in the Save America Act. Trump agreed to delink the two, but only on the condition that SAVE provisions ride in the reconciliation vehicle right behind it. And Thune has long been reluctant to pursue a second reconciliation bill. He's been telling reporters for months that he didn't think there would be a good reason to do so. However, all of that changed Monday after that White House meeting with those key senators and with Markwayne Mullin. They sold President Trump on the reconciliation approach, and apparently they sold Thune. Thune told Politico that a brewing DHS spending deal had lent new momentum to the push for another party line reconciliation bill. He told the Washington Examiner just yesterday, quote, "We'll look at all the options on Save America. We've contemplated reconciliation for other things. We got a couple of vehicles available to us, and if we find that that's a viable path that makes sense to get some things done, we will use it." And so after months of telling us that reconciliation was a bridge too far, he's finally saying that he's on board with it. That's a cave, gang. Bottom line, that's it. That is a full, unambiguous cave on the part of Thune. And it's really about time. I mean, the bottom line here is that the Senate is broken, and I think we just need to come to terms with that. Ever since an informal filibuster has gone into effect with the rule changes all the way back to the 1970s, nevertheless, that set the stage for the incurable partisan paralysis that's beset the Senate. The 60-vote threshold is simply unassailable in today's poisonous partisanship. The Senate hasn't been able to pass any major legislation overcoming that 60-vote threshold since Obamacare in 2010. It's literally been 16 years of legislative paralysis. So the Republicans really have no choice here. If they refuse to gut the filibuster, then they're going to have to get creative and find ways of passing bills through the reconciliation process that bypasses the filibuster. That's exactly what the Democrats did, and I'm going to show you how we can do it and finally restore security and integrity to our elections. But first, did you know they're saying the next pandemic is already here? I kid you not, but this time it's being called an antimicrobial resistance. Now, here's what's really going on here. What started as a life-saving medical discovery is turned into routine overuse. Antibiotics are now overly prescribed in medicine, and every time you take them, you're disrupting your gut microbiome. Now, once that balance is lost, immunity weakens, inflammation rises, metabolism shifts, and chronic disease begins to follow things like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So maybe the question isn't how we kill stronger bacteria. Maybe it's how we rebuild our gut health. And the most powerful way to rebuild it is with a centuries-old fermented food, kimchi. In fact, studies reveal kimchi has powerful immune-supporting effects, helping your body shut down illnesses before they even have the chance to start. And that's because fermentation produces beneficial probiotic bacteria that help restore balance in the gut microbiome and support immune function. Kimchi has also been shown to be an antimicrobial, meaning it eliminates funguses like candida, nasty parasites, and defends against dangerous viruses. And since 70-80% of your immune system lives in your gut, strengthening the microbiome helps strengthen your body's overall defenses. So when your gut microbiome is thriving, your whole immune system becomes more resilient. But here's the challenge. Most people aren't eating kimchi consistently enough to get these benefits. They don't like the taste, they don't like the smell, or the hassle that comes with making it fresh. That's why Brightcore created Kimchi One. I take Kimchi One every single day, and I absolutely love it. Over 900 plus strains of beneficial bacteria that deliver all the benefits of real kimchi in convenient capsules. No taste, no smell, no GMO, and 100% made right here in the USA. Today you can try Kimchi One by clicking the link below for 25% off your entire order, or for the best deal available, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off plus free shipping. Give them a call right now at 888-597-0233. That's 888-597-0233. Now, before the Democrats start clutching their pearls about Republicans using reconciliation in an unlawful manner and blah, 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 let me remind you of a couple of things. The left has used this exact same tool to ram through some of the most radical, economy-crushing legislation in American history, all on party line votes, not a single Republican needed. Remember the American Rescue Plan in 2021. Do you remember that fiasco? That was the $1.9 trillion monstrosity that passed through reconciliation with 0 Republican votes. Not one. They used a procedural maneuver called a budget resolution to unlock the process and pushed it through in the dead of winter while the country was still locked down. Then came, if you remember, the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, the most ironically named act in history. It reduced inflation the way a 5-alarm fire reduces a building, okay? Nearly $800 billion in new spending, green energy subsidies, and tax hikes on American businesses. That monstrosity, too, passed through reconciliation, 51-50. Vice President Kamala Harris had to cast the tie-breaking vote. Every single Democrat voted yes. Every single Republican voted no. So when Chuck Schumer stands up and tells you reconciliation is an abuse of power, just remember that Dracula actually pioneered the playbook. He wrote the playbook. And now that Republicans want to use the same tool to protect your vote rather than spend your money, suddenly it's a constitutional crisis. BS. The only crisis here is the Democrats are terrified of clean elections. And that tells you everything you need to know. Now, the key here is that the SAVE Act would have to be rewritten to pass what's called the Byrd Rule. So that's the rule that requires that anything in a reconciliation bill has to have a direct budgetary impact. And some senators, including Mike Lee, who sponsored the SAVE Act, have said that passing it through reconciliation is probably, he thinks it's essentially impossible. But Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, who's the architect of this reconciliation strategy, he's got a pretty compelling answer to that. He says cleaning up voter rolls directly impacts welfare budgets, housing subsidies, unemployment benefits, right? If non-citizens are fraudulently registered, taxpayer resources inevitably follow. So the irony here is that left-wing groups are actually making the case for us on this. They're openly admitting that welfare rolls would be inordinately impacted by the SAVE Act. Federal means-tested programs, Medicaid, SNAP food stamps, Section 8 housing, supplemental security income, are supposed to be restricted to citizens and lawfully present immigrants only. But when non-citizens are fraudulently registered to vote using false documentation, those same fraudulent identities are often used to access those very welfare programs. Clean voter rolls mean clean benefit rolls. The Congressional Budget Office can score that as a direct reduction in federal outlays. The same goes for Social Security and unemployment insurance. Unauthorized workers who fraudulently obtain work authorization, often using the same documentation pathways that enable fraudulent voter registration, draw on unemployment insurance when they lose their jobs. Every fraudulent claim on the Unemployment Trust Fund is a measurable federal expenditure. Cleaning up identity verification at the voter registration level tightens the entire documentation ecosystem. And on top of that, the SAVE Act actually requires states to run voter rolls through the Department of Homeland Security's SAVE database, the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements system. That program already exists precisely because Congress recognized that identity fraud in public benefits was a billion-dollar problem. Expanding SAVE verification to voter rolls is a direct budgetary mechanism. It costs money to run, and it saves money by catching fraud. The CBO can score both sides of that ledger. Now, is this airtight? Not yet. That's precisely why Senator John Kennedy is calling for a targeted rewrite of the bill to make its budgetary hooks explicit and scorable by the CBO. The goal is to frame the SAVE Act not as a standalone election policy bill, but as an integrity provision attached to federal entitlement and benefit spending, which is exactly where the Byrd Rule allows it to live. In other words, it's not just about who votes, it's about who collects. And that, gang, is a budget issue through and through. And so, the budget connection is real. And Senator Kennedy is saying that a reconciliation rewrite could be done in a matter of days, about 10 days. The people with Trump on this, 83% of likely voters say all ballots should be in by Election Day. 84% of independents support voter ID. This is not a partisan issue. It's common sense, and Washington knows it. The only question now is whether the Senate has the spine to match the energy of the American people who sent them there. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. Love you guys. God bless.